And Meg, we're live. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Fitter and Faster Coaches Corner. I'm your host, as always, Mike Murray. Today, I am thrilled to speak with one of the finest coaches in American swimming, a fellow ASCA board member, Coach Megan Oesting from the Eastern Iowa Swim Federation. Welcome, Meg.
Hi, Mike. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Meg, you are an ASCA Level 5 coach. You created and own the Eastern Iowa Swim Federation. You changed that from a local community team in 2016, expanded to 3 sites, which is near and dear to me today. We just opened our 3rd site today. Super exciting time for us here at Victor.
Nice.
Your athletes have posted over 25 top 100 all-time national age group swims, half of which were in the top 10 and including 1 NAG record. You were the 2018 top 10 finalist for the National Age Group Coach of the Year Award. And in 2019, you won the award. Coach Meg, you appear on the Foundations of Coaching 101 and 201 education videos for USA Swimming and have been selected as the head coach of the 2019 Southern Zone Select Camp. Select Camp's near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
Part of the best progression, I think, in USA Swimming. You've been a keynote speaker at the 2020 ASCA Clinic, and you've spoken at several different clinics across the country in the last few years. You've also been a speaker with the University of Iowa Student Business Organization as an expert on communication and empowerment. You are part of the USA Swimming Women in Leadership Conference, a very important part of the direction of our national governing body. Also at the National Team Coaches Conference, and you are an active member of the USA Swimming National Team Alumni Association. Before you and I jumped on this week, I had joked with you that I was doing some research, and I found out that not only did you swim at UCLA, but you also played water polo. Before we jump into it, our icebreaker for today, Coach, what is it like balancing being a great athlete and sharing your time across 2 sports?
It was humbling. Very humbling. So when I got the opportunity to play water polo, I had never played before. I like to think of myself as moderately athletic, but I was a starting UCLA water polo player where there's 7 people in the water and 6 were national team players. And there were people on the bench far better all around water polo players than me. So getting in there and just hustling myself hard in order to support really incredible people and really incredible athletes was amazing. You know, I was not the star, but if I could maintain my faculties in there and keep up, then I could help them be brighter stars. And that was super cool.
Oh, absolutely. And what did your swim team friends and your teammates think about you doing both? How did you balance that?
Well, I was always I love the water. I love the water. I love my friends in the water. I love to play in the water. And they know that. You know, some people in college swimming are exploring other opportunities in their lives and sort of weaning themselves out of the sport and weaning themselves to a different place in their lives. And although I was in that process on my own life path, I really wasn't done with the water. And I wanted more, not less of the water. Water polo was kind of my weaning from swimming, where I didn't have to leave sport and I didn't have to leave my relationship with the water. And it was perfect for me. I loved it. I love my teammates. I love the coaching staff. And I loved, you know, swimming is a very introverted thing, and you know what's going to happen. You know exactly when that first turn is going to happen, and you know exactly how many strokes are you can script the whole thing. So swimming is more like a play, but water polo is more like improv. You know, we're going to go out there and something's going to happen, and we're not quite sure what's going to happen, but we're going to stay together. And that was a cool perspective. I really had a great time. It's near and dear to my heart at that time that I got to do that. So they were, to answer your question, they were really supportive of me because they know, I mean, I'm very easy to read, and they knew that I was happy and that I was having fun. And it wasn't an affront on swimming, because swimming is my love, and it still is. But I was really enjoying the water, and I was really enjoying exploring myself in a different context in the water. And that was really cool for me. So they were happy for me. They liked it. They were proud of me.
That's so exciting to be able to do that, do both of those sports. And for us on the East Coast, there are some water polo programs and there's a lot of crossover, obviously. But when you get out west and you're in California, I mean, there's so much. I remember a coach that both you and I are very fond of, and Chuck Warner would tell me stories about how some of the distance swimmers in California, they'd get up in the morning, they'd surf. Then they'd go to morning practice. They played water polo in the afternoon, and then they went to swim practice at night.
It's a lot of water.
It's unbelievable.
Imagine what that would do for your feel. I mean, you can go vertical, you can go horizontal. There's torque, there's movement, there's quickness, there's agility. I mean, if you really want to be a water bender, like any good swimmer is, what a great way to have a deeper relationship with the water than to go out and surf, where it's certainly in control and you are secondarily coming in with it. And with water polo, where you're in every single plane doing everything. You're going up, you're going left, right, sometimes you're going back under. You got to be aware of everything going on around you, almost in a sixth sense kind of way. What a great way to be involved with the water. And then, you could go any direction after that with it.
That's a great perspective, because there are movements in our physical literacy that you're constantly improving in those modalities. So that's really interesting. We could do a whole show on that.
We could. Well, I love how you say the physical literacy of it. So actually, one of the things that I got to do when I was a little kid on summer swim team after the season was over, which was, end of July, when I was a little tiny person, they also had a synchronized swimming program for like 4 weeks to fill that August thing, because in Seattle, we didn't start until after Labor Day. And so we had another opportunity. And I think synchronized swimmers are the most beautiful combination of what you do in water polo and what you do in swimming, not only in terms of the agility and the strength and the athleticism, but they're doing it with grace. And the way that a synchronized swimmer puts that together and performs something that's both scripted, but you need the skills and the artistic nature of what you would have in water polo. I love that. And I've always held synchronized swimmers in a really high regard. In fact, in high school, there was a synchronized swimming program just north of us. There was a gal that did synchronized swimming and then decided to swim on our swim team her sophomore year or something. And I remember thinking, like, this is the only person I'm actually afraid of, is the synchronized swimmer. And I never did lose a race in high school swimming, but for her, I was ready to go, because she could grab the water and she was strong and she knew what she was doing in the water. And her name was Tony Ferry. So Tony, if you're watching, props to you. I still remember. And so the synchronized swimmers have a special place in my heart, just because of the profound respect I have for the way they are literate with the water.
I can imagine there's so many crossovers between what they do and then the application of great technique. And it's a great segue into our topic today. We're going to talk a little bit about age group development, and something that you have come close to creating expert knowledge in, and certainly something that all coaches are so interested in the development of their own teams. But I first wanted to ask you, because as an ASCA board member, as a coach who's been in the business for a long time now, we're all kind of wondering what's going to be the direction of USA Swimming after we get through these challenging times.
Yeah, I think we have really, if we weren't innovative before, if we weren't already thinking outside the box in the patterns of our sport, I think we've been pushed. We've been pushed off that balance point. And I think really great things can happen when you're pushed off that balance point. I think the broadening of your own perspective opens up opportunities for action that you might not have even seen. And so there have been actions available to us, but we don't see that path. So we can't go down a path that we don't see. And sometimes we can see it, but we don't understand it. So we're not motivated to do that, because it's safer to do what I've done, what we've done, and what is kind of standard business practice in our sport. But I think the innovation and the creativity that's going to come out of this ultimately, I'm not saying this is, I'm not necessarily having a positive experience with what I want to give right now, but I'm certainly opening up to experimenting and problem solving with problems I didn't have. And I think, in any context, when you are forced to solve different problems in different ways, I think you're going to get a lot smarter. And I think you're going to have an expanded perspective. And I think that's what we're doing now. We're discovering things that we've been really pushed to experience and lean into that wouldn't have been very comfortable if we had had our safety net of our sport, which we have had for a really long time. So I think there will be some great things that come out of this for our sport.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest questions for a lot of coaches out there right now, how do I adjust and pivot my program to fit the current context of what we're living in? So does the single pool running the team out of one site, does that model work anymore? I think we have to evaluate whether or not that's going to work in the future if we want to maintain viability financially, from a performance standpoint, all of those types of things. The biggest challenge in all of that, though, and you know this very well as a club owner and head coach, how are you communicating to your membership right now and to the athletes who are frustrated with this situation?
Well, certainly actively. I think there's a great deal of humility involved that I think the cornerstone of my program has always been that I'm trying just as hard as you are, if not harder. And with that runway to go into this, our season was done on the way to sectionals, and many people had that experience. We were about an hour out of Pleasant Prairie for sectionals for that Thursday night session. And on the way home is when I started writing up, planning and modeling my dry curriculum and how I was going to lead us through still expanding our experience in swimming, which is really what we're supposed to be doing anyway as coaches. So they're in the water, but I'm trying to expand their perception and their perspective and their experience in swimming. And normally we do that in the water, and now everybody's job just changed. So the fundamental of the job didn't change. So it is my task to lead people through their experience in swimming. But now I have to do it without water and without a group context. So what am I going to do? So on the way home, that's when I developed this idea that if I could talk to them, if I could tell them, and we could have discussions on things that could allow us to go deeper when we do get back in the water, which nobody knew when that was going to be. I mean, I vividly remember one of my, it was like a morning news type thing. I always started with wrapping up the day before and introducing what we were going to talk about. And I vividly remember saying, I'm so excited. It feels like we're so close. We could be back in the water in 2 weeks. That was, I think that was in May. And we didn't get back in the water till mid-July in a very limited context. So, I mean, so ignorant of what was going to happen. But I think I had set the platform for not only the content of what we were going to do together as a team without water, but also the continuing effort where there will be no change in my effort to lead you through this and for us to go through this together. And no one is going to work harder during this than I am. And I'm going to work for you, and I'm going to work for us. And that has always been what we do anyway. And I've always emphasized the conversations at practice regarding why we're doing what we're doing. And so there was really this beautiful continuity in how we went through end of March, April, May, June. And we have brought that back. So when we do get together now, our main site is not open. So we have a 4-lane pool that we have four people in each lane, 2 on each side. So we have a 16-person opportunity when we have that opportunity. And I gave a talk this summer on coaching in a 1-room schoolhouse. which is what it feels like. And that, I mean, like we talked about at the very beginning, like, okay, that's not what I would have programmed my team to be last year if I had my normal situation, but that is what I'm doing now. And so I have got to deliver to the 8-year-old and the 16-year-old and everybody in between. And I better dance pretty fast in order to get everybody continuing to expand in their experience, which is what I'm supposed to be doing. So I think leadership in terms of walking the walk and staying engaged has been the fundamental premise of how we've walked through this together.
No doubt. And it's such an important time for our athletes to look to someone for that guidance and for that leadership. And being that person is a tremendous responsibility. And it's something that we have to quantify as coaches and team owners and administrators with how it's affecting our lives as people.
Oh, goodness, yes.
Because the dynamic between running your team and being the integral person that you are to your family puts a lot of stress on what we do. And this has been a seminal topic throughout Coaches Corners since the pandemic started. But what are some strategies that you use personally to create, and I hate this phrase, some of the work-life balance?
I am not the poster girl for work-life balance. And I don't say that with pride. My family is amazing. My husband is extremely supportive. And my heart, my passion, my personal passion is in serving the growth of these swimmers through the context of swimming. That gives me energy. That makes me feel good personally. Some people, they pick a self-care activity, get a massage, go for a walk. Yes, I enjoy that, but not if my work's not done. In fact, that'll be more stressful to me to go get a massage. I would rather not do that until I'm done with whatever my project is. And like I said, I am not saying, hey guys, this is the way to go. I'm just saying that that's a struggle for me. And so I think one of the challenges in being a leader is, like we said, to walk the walk. And this is an area where I need to do better, and I need to walk the walk of balance. And whatever self-care looks like for me, then I need to do that. And that's actually come in the form of more efficiency, so that I do have space on the other side, so that the same task, this is actually, I think, what's gone on in the past 4 years for me, is that the same task that used to take me 10 hours because I didn't understand it and I was experimenting and working my way through it, took me 8 and 6 and 4 and 2 and 1. And now I have 9 hours to make choices with. And sometimes I'll choose another project to my pride and to my peril. But sometimes I will have space and I will take that space. And so, I think it's a journey for every coach, just like balance is a journey for every athlete. You come in as a 10, 11, 12-year-old, and you're generally, that is the most passionate, excited group of people that you will ever coach. Their parents, the athletes, it is exciting. It's fun. I want to do this. They sit there with their bags waiting for the carpool, like probably a lot of us did, like 15 minutes before, I'm like, let's go, and 10 minutes early is 5 minutes late because my friends are already there. And I'm so blessed to be able to work in that context with people in that space, but we all kind of know what happens after that too, is we maybe go, the pendulum swings a little far, and then we find out where we can live in there. And I think as coaches, we do the same thing as we're trying to help our athletes do. And again, I think modeling that, or at least talking about it and making it an explicit conversation, I think is at least a start.
It's very insightful, and I appreciate you sharing that personal side of it. And something that you said at the end there really resonated with me. Two things, actually. The first one is, as we navigate how to balance our lives, it's really important to understand how to get to mastery. And you talked about spending 10 hours on a project that now you know it inside and out, it takes you one. That takes time. And I think a lot of young coaches, when they get into this business, they start to think to themselves after year one or year two, how am I ever going to make a career out of this?
Yeah.
And so going through those processes is so important. The other thing that you said directly relates to what we're talking about today in terms of age group development. And that's those young age group athletes from 8 to 12, some of your 13 and 14-year-olds, that's where the cynicism starts right about 14.
Yeah.
The only expectation that they have about practice during those formative years, in my opinion, is that it's going to be fun. That's the expectation. You have a few of them who drive for those high IMX scores, qualifying times, motivational times, national age group, top 25. You have those. But for the most part, they're going to practice to have fun, and racing is fun. Even when you might not be the most successful athlete in a program, racing is fun. Talk about how, as a coach, you tap into that mindset. And is that the mindset that you see?
Well, first of all, I think you really hit the nail on the head in terms of mastery. I mean, I think the book of that title by George Leonard is something that every coach should read and would help them give a long-term perspective, because this is a long game. I don't know about you, but I mean, I wasn't very good at it for a decade, maybe two. It takes a long time to figure this out, and your own maturity and your own growth process has a lot to do with that. But in terms of fun, we kind of have a joke on the team that, I have my own little definition of fun, and I am not a very good camp counselor. Know your strengths and know your weaknesses. I'm just not. And I really appreciate people that are, and I'm so thankful when I have one of them on my staff, because I know that I'm not that good at that. But what I am good at is having fun in borderline obsession type activities, So I think that's part of people who've had an elite athletic career or even an elite music career. If you're going to be on the top, there's this little nugget of obsession that goes along with it, but that can be really positive. So there was a Netflix special this past summer, and it was about the Rubik's Cube competition. And this guy, his last name was Park. I forget what his name was, but his favorite thing to do is play with the 3x3, the 4x4, the 6x6. I don't even know. And he'll spend hours and hours. Or like a little kid a teenage boy that gets his first guitar, and he spends hours in his room with that guitar. Some people would say, that's work, that's not play. You shouldn't be working. What 14 or what 13-year-old should be spending 10 hours a day on an activity that's not healthy? Okay, but, and I'm not saying that we should swim 10 hours a day, but what I'm saying is the idea of fun is personal. And my idea of fun is running the race. It's playing the game. It's hopping in with those water polo players and saying, like, I have no idea what's going to happen, but like, this is so exciting. Let's go. And I'm going to hustle, and that's really what I model with the kids. So like I said, it's kind of a joke on my team that sometimes I have to spell out the word because I don't have the right to say it. So we say that we're going to have some FUN today. But I will do, like we had, like back to what we were talking about before, we had a stretch when we were, our normal pool situation where we had water polo Wednesday, and I called it Fiffy Faffy Friday for synchronized swimming because I didn't know what rhymed with what alliterated with F. So so for me, I could have that kind of fun if I knew I was accomplishing something, because to me, accomplishing something and being in task and putting a puzzle together. I'm a puzzle person, and that's fun for me. Whereas other people might say, like, well, you're looking at, a table for 6 hours and putting colors in piles. Yeah, but I think it's really fun. So I think I can help. I would like to say that I help kids find what their version of fun is. And like I said, if I've had some really incredible leaders come up on the team that really would be amazing camp counselors. And I don't say that with any disrespect whatsoever. I mean, I say it with a ton of respect. And their performance level was all across the spectrum. But having them on the team was such a gift to me and to everybody else, that their journey was to contribute in that fashion. And some people are going to contribute with their performance because they're a little obsessive, and that would have been me. And there's some people that contribute with their work ethic. And there's so many ways that you can engage in a fulfilling way that can deeply express who you are. And the sport is just a context for that. So like I said, you could do that by playing the flute or by doing the high jump or whatever. But I think making sure that everybody has a place to express that allows everybody to have fun, and then we can kind of play off our differences, and it is fun. That's actually really fun to me. So I think the fact that I'm having fun, and even if that means driving and working and getting after something, which I think is fun, maybe shows them that maybe they didn't think of it that way, but it really can be fun. And maybe that offers them a perspective that they may or may not choose to do the sport like that. And that's absolutely up to them.
I think you did a really good job reframing the word, right? So early in my career, fun for our athletes was associated with, we're playing water polo for the last 15 minutes, right? Not 3 1,000s for time. Let's descend and negative split all three.
Yeah. Which I think sounds great, actually.
Yeah. Now we have kids that thrive on those types of challenges. And the more that we get into the program, the more that cultural shift happens, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, when you do something really challenging at the end of the workout, the kids are saying, that was hard, but I'll tell you what, like, that was a fun practice. We got some work done.
There's depth to that. And back to the George Leonard Mastery book, there's, you can be a skipping stone across the surface and experience many, many different things. And that has validity. But there's a certain satisfaction to depth that I really align with. And so that's that, the culture of the team really follows the personality of the leadership. And I think depth is extremely rewarding. And so that's where I lead from.
A fellow colleague, Samantha Arsenault, Livingstone, she's doing some really great work right now.
Yes.
And she has a saying that really resonated with me, and I'm saying to our athletes now, and especially our age groupers, is we can do hard things.
Yeah.
We can do hard things and still enjoy the process of development. Yeah. And focusing on that is so critical. Talk to me about how you do that with your team and how you implement that with your staff.
I think playing the long game is fundamental to moving through hard things, and also the narrative that you put around this. So, what if you have one of those fast little kids? Like they're magical. They're magical 8, 9, 10-year-olds, and but life isn't going to be magical in the sport. You're going to have to go in and out, maybe many times, of whether it's a plateau or I mean, there's so many hard things that we have the opportunity to experience. They're coming, but how we frame that for them and what we get out of that, and the character building, and I don't mean that in a trite way, helping a kid through their first plateau with the long-term view that it isn't going to last forever, and that what you go through with and the perspective that you gain through this is actually a tool that you need, that will help you when you're 16. And really, the sooner you do that, the better. So you could actually be more mature, and you will. not everybody comes out the other side. You know, some people, they decide not to do this anymore. They decide not to do hard things and pop back out to the skipping stone. And that's fine too. We all have our path, and we're ready for levels of depth in that area at different times. But in terms of the long-term growth through the sport, I don't care if you, actually, that kid that set the national age group record didn't do a best time in that event for a year. And then his time just dropped like a stone. So I think that helped him be able to try. I mean, when he did that, the kid just sprinted. He just sprinted. He told me he wanted a national age group record, and he had swum the 200 early in the meet, and he was, I don't know, he's not really a sprinter type person, but he was off by like 2 seconds or something. And then he swam the mile, and he was within 2 seconds. And that was heartbreaking, because you could tell when those paces were just a 10th off and the direction he was going. My heart just broke for him. And then the last day at finals was that 500 free. And would he have gone with such abandon if he hadn't had the experience of not getting a best time in his 500 free for a year? I mean, I think it was 11 months, but that's a really long time for a little kid. I think that was one of the best things that he could have experienced him. I was going to say that could have happened to him, but it didn't happen to him. It was part of the growth and the give and take that goes with this sport. And he allowed himself to be with that and stay engaged. And that's really what we all need to do through hard times. And as coaches, we're having hard times right now. You know, we can talk about it and say it's okay, it's going to be fine. And logically that's true, but it doesn't mean it's not emotionally hard. It doesn't mean, we had our first meet back in the middle of August, and we were not fast. And there was no reason to think we were going to be fast. The articles are out there, people that are thriving. We were not thriving. For whatever reason, many reasons, doesn't matter. We were not going to be fast. And I feel like I'm a pretty logical person, but that hurt. A friend of mine said, you're used to their performance being directly correlated to your effort. And I tried harder over the past 8 months than I think I've ever worked and ever tried as a coach. And my results were much, much worse than I've ever had as a coach. And that was hard. Just because there's a logical explanation for it doesn't mean it's not hard. And that's what our kids feel. That's what our athletes feel. Sometimes we try to logic them out of their feelings. You can't logic yourself out of your feelings, and you can't logic them out of their feelings. You have to be there with it. This is hard. Yes, it is. And we need to sit with it, and we need to keep going. And that's part of that mastery process.
I think that's one of the most impactful things that we've heard in terms of how we are handling maybe some perceived disappointment by our athletes inside of the box of COVID. Because you're right, the swim phenomena is out there, and that publication does an incredible job for our sport. But one thing that it also does is it creates this perception that, well, we can do that too. We can go best times, which is good. But what happens if we don't? And how do we relate that to our athletes? Getting back to one of the points that you made when you were talking about your athlete who went on to break the national age group record, but had not gone a best time in that event in 11 months. Typically, that's where we have some tough conversations with parents. The 3 best athletes that I've ever had have had years where they didn't go a best time in what they thought was their best event. This is the event that defines me. Well, wait a second, you got faster in everything except this, right? So what are some things that you do to talk to parents when an athlete might be going through that? And you yourself know that you're a logical, rational thinking coach, right? You're not the parent. So you're saying, what do you mean we're not developing? We're getting faster in everything. We can't identify ourselves with one event. So how do you talk to parents about situations like that?
You know, I think I'm going to say educating, but I don't mean it like, well, they need to know these specific things and then they'll feel better. I mean, this is their first time, but it's not my first time. I should not expect them to know the path of growth for the 500 kids that came before them. I should know the growth, and I should be able to communicate that I had a boy that was a 200, 500 freestyler out of high school, and by the time he was done with college, he swam the 100 breasted in 2As. I didn't even know. I didn't know. We didn't know. We were doing what we were getting better, and we were going towards races that we were experiencing success in. And you know, it's not that we only did the 200, 500 free, but those were the things that he swam. And so then we leaned our training towards that. But I think when you tell stories to parents about things that have actually happened, like, so we have a girl that I adore as a human who went to Olympic trials in 2016 and got up and gained time. So here, you know, the 11-12 conversation about, oh, I gained time, I'm having a bad meet, and that's no good, and I missed my taper. Well, you mean, they don't really know what they're talking about, but they feel bad. And all they're doing is expressing that they feel bad. So regardless of what data points they're using, they're just trying to tell you they feel bad. So I tell them the story, and the parents the story, where she got up there and she didn't do well. And then she got up the next day for another event and she gained time again. And she got up the next day and she did an event and she gained time and got disqualified. So how many people are going to throw in the towel at that point? I mean, are you going to keep getting up with purity in your try? And as parents, are you going to have your own drama to add to this situation? Or can you just let this happen? Move forward. And it doesn't mean that, you know, everybody that opens with that series of events is going to magically turn it around. And it doesn't mean that everybody that opens is going to flop the meet. So she swam her best event the next day and she made semis, and then she swam the event at night and she made finals and she was in lane 8 and she got 4th. So just stay here, just stay with it. Just keep walking. The level of vulnerability that you need to learn how to have in order to go through this sport successfully. I don't care how you define success. Coming out the other side with the experience of empowerment, which is what we're trying to do for these athletes, is allow them to have a context for that experience so they can create that, because you can't empower them from the outside. You have to help them find their strength. This same person, you know, I brought her to one of the National Team Alumni Association meetings, luncheon type things. And I said, hey, Jill Circle, have you ever had a bad meet? Oh my gosh, story upon story, right? Hey, John Moffitt, have you ever had a bad meet? Oh yeah, like the 1984 Olympics where I tore my groin in prelims and I'm the world record holder. Yeah, I've had a bad meet. Did it go okay after? Yeah, it did. Can you predict when that bad meet's going to happen? Probably not. Hearing about people that are successful and human and vulnerable and have gone through these trials that your kid is now going through, I think helps them feel like they're not alone, that there's not something wrong with them as parents. You know, as a parent, I think our greatest fear is that we're screwing something up. And when your kid is out there performing, it can sometimes feel like they are a reflection of how good you are as a parent. And my kid swims, and it has been a journey, because he's been everything from, you know, what do you call it? Like a BC swimmer who, you know, was lucky to be entered in the meet to the fastest 50 freestyler in the country in his age, and everything in between. And he can be vulnerable with, his goggles is filled up and he's missed his turn on a relay. And he realized how much he cared about his teammates. Okay, well, I would call that a successful day as a parent, because he didn't know that he cared that much. And so now he makes sure he's ready to go and bring it on relays because he had that failure of an experience. It was not a failure. And I think he learned, you know, when he came back to me, this, you know, strapping kid that's, you know, 6 inches taller than I am, with tears in his eyes, and I'm his coach too, which is a little bit weird, but I think when he came back and all I had was like, it's okay, that I'm not mad at him, that I think that was a pivot point for him moving forward as well. And so talking to parents as a parent, talking to parents as a former athlete, and talking to parents with a giant Rolodex of people who have succeeded and failed and understand what we're actually doing in this sport, the real thing that we're doing in this sport, I think helps them engage in a more mature way and learn along with the kids. I mean, it is their first time too.
I love the phrase, you have a Rolodex of experience with people that you can use as positive examples moving forward. And it sounds to me, and just knowing you the way that we interact in the past and just getting to know each other more, it sounds like at practice, it's a safe space to fail.
Absolutely.
Failure in a safe place to fail and experiment. Talk to me about some of the things that you do in practice to encourage them to challenge themselves and not be afraid to miss an interval, not be afraid to try the next level up. What does that look like?
Well, I mean, sometimes it comes in the form of examples and hero stories. So I have a boy on the team that is 12, and a year ago he started to really get into the sport. And this guy is like a Rudy Rudiger kid. And so I had them choose their send-offs for a set that I told them the purpose is I want about 10 seconds rest. I want you to be able to hold about this off, you know, what we've been doing. And I want you to pick your lane. And they did. And, you know, so it's a experiment in responsibility and self-knowledge as well. And he picked a lane that I knew was going to be trouble. And he started getting tight, and then he almost missed it. And I said to this person, hey, it's okay if you move over, it's all right. And he looked at me and he goes, no. He yelled at me. And he pushed off and he did his thing. And so we're using the headset. So everybody said, or everybody heard, you have an out. I already respect what you're doing. And I respect the effort that you've given. You have already succeeded. And so that already happened. So that's broadcast. But also he said no. So now he's one of our hero stories. This kid that who knows what he will do. It has absolutely nothing to do with his performance in meets, and everything to do with, I will try and you cannot stop me from trying. And so when we raise people up with character in those ways, I mean, he would certainly be a pillar for work ethic and persistence. But we also raise people up for trying new things. The thing, you will not get admonished in my practice for not making an interval or a set or not hitting a time. You will be admonished for not knowing what's going on or not engaging, for not trying. If it's time to go and you don't, that's a problem. If we are ready to hit it together and you are not supporting that effort, that's a problem. If you go, we're done. It's an A+. No matter what happens, if you go and you just don't let go. And so, okay, so then you fell off at number 9 of the 16-100s on 110. And then you barely made them. And then the last one, you dug deep. Great. you had to skip one because you missed it. Great. But not knowing what your times are, if it's a stroke count thing, if I expect you to build into the wall and you come in and stop and do an open turn on freestyle because I don't know where you were, that's a problem, and you're going to hear it, and everybody hears it. So the accountability is to your engagement, not to your outcome. And I think that sets the tone for, okay, well, I guess the outcome almost doesn't matter. So in that way it's safe, but I'll tell you, it's not safe to not try.
Right. One of the things that I was interested in asking you about, and you and I have gone pretty deep philosophically here, which has been awesome. I know that you use the swim communicator. What do you use to talk to your athletes?
It's called My Swim Ears.
My Swim
Yeah.
Ears. So you're actively coaching your athletes. They have the receiver in their ear or on their cap.
Yeah, this guy. So they'll wear this guy, and so it's bone conduction. So they'll just strap the goggle strap underneath, and I have my, I'm on the mic. I'm like a aerobics instructor on the mic, and so every day is kind of its own little podcast. We talk about all sorts of things, and that's where I tell stories to try to illustrate and find a connection
while they're swimming.
While they're swimming.
So they could be warming up, and through their warm up, you might have a little tidbit about like an experience that you had that relates maybe to what you're doing today.
So no, the warm up is the conversation. So there isn't like a warm up and then I'll like insert the whole thing. I mean, so I submitted my workout of the week, right? Like they asked us to do.
Yeah.
And I what I tried to do is share the conversation that I had for warm up. So what we were talking about that day was acceleration versus velocity, and how that plays into the flow of your swimming, and how to recognize the feel of when you're decelerating, what a change of direction is, and how you need a pivot point. Like a wide receiver goes down, he can't pivot to the inside unless he's got something to push off of, and a nice strong cleat and a really strong core, and he's going to push through his hips. And so the warm up, they get in with their snorkels and their headsets, and they swim, and we talk about what we're going to be going over today. And then we get into the conversation that I want to have with them, and I want to teach them something. And so like that day, I wanted to teach them about the feeling of traction at a pivot point, and where that is in your fly and your rest and your back and your free, and even your underwater dolphin kick, even on your turn, there's a change of direction, and that's got to come from an internal movement. It's not something you can necessarily draw out. Like when you do yoga, which I don't, because it's probably the hardest thing on earth for me. But they come around in your downward dog, and they put their hand on your back, and they say, now drive your fingertips into, and you're like, oh, this is totally different. This is not the same thing I was doing 10 seconds ago. And I think swimming is like that too. You can be in the same, like if I filmed you, you could say, well, yep, the elbow's at 45 degrees. Well, great. But that doesn't have anything to do with the pressure you are going to vault off of in the water. You could be in that position. So the conversations that we have a lot to do with priming their awareness for what's going on. So like in the talent code, they talk about deep practice, and you have got to be mentally engaged and up to something in order to myelinate quickly. And that's what we're doing. So I think somebody asked me to give a talk a while ago on endurance training for, growing athletes. And I was like, why are you asking me about endurance training for growing athletes? We are a technique-based program. But then as I went through, but we are the team that comes home in the forenoon. We are the team that swims the mile, and not because it was a little bit of a disconnect for me, because yes, we do behave like that in meets, but I am a technique-based coach. But what I realized was that with my swimmers, they are having an EN1 to EN2 warm up. We could be having that conversation for a half an hour.
Sure.
And so, and we're not really stopping that much in between sets. There's 3 minutes, but I can explain the set and go over the set again, and I can change the set, and I can do whatever I want. They're doing a heck of a lot more swimming, and they're doing it in ways that are patterning more functional, effective motions, but it's not just the biomechanics of it. It's the strength and energy corralling of it. It's getting your abs and lats to flex on the water through your arm. And that's not an easy concept. So talking them through it while they're swimming allows them to make connections that, most people have to kind of figure out on their own. So it does turn out that we're doing more yardage, I guess, although that was never the intent. But it also turns out that when we are patterning something, when little kids come up and they don't finish their butterfly, they're like dropped off from swim lessons when they can side breathe. Okay, but you are not done with freestyle just because you can make it to the other end without drowning and breathing slightly more to the side than you can to the front. And so we talk about, like, I want you to have a black belt. And that, because just like in like karate or taekwondo, having a black belt is the beginning of the conversation. It's not the end of the conversation. And so I think before you train a kid, they need to be brown belt, black belt capable in their stroke. But I think I can train kids a little bit sooner because they acquire their brown belt, black belt in the stroke a little bit sooner, so that now we're patterning something fruitful instead of patterning something that's ineffective. And now you've got, 15, 16-year-olds swimming like they're 12 because that's the stroke they started training with. That's the pattern stroke. And it's hard to turn that around. So in terms of, like, we're talking about age group development, I think once you give them their big kid stroke, then you can start doing big kid sets. But I think one has to come before the other. And I think using my swimmers just accelerates every single process that we do in there. And so, when team A is jumping, climbing a flight of stairs a day, we're climbing 5 flights of stairs a day. So our improvement curve is just so much faster because it's knowledge and experiential, and it's engaged.
You touched on a lot of things that really had flags come up as great points. And I think one of the things that you do very well is you're embracing some innovation in your coaching. I heard you use the phrase myelinate. You're thinking about insulating these athletes' neurological pathways. It's so important.
Yeah.
One thing that came to my mind, and I seem to come back to Jack Roach in every single coach's corner that I do.
Rightfully so.
And I haven't had him on yet. But he said something to me a couple of years ago. We were at the Grand Prix in Austin, and he said, the most important thing that you can do as a coach is learn the learner. Yeah. And boy, Agreed. Like, what a whole new way for me to think. And I see and I hear you doing that. Do you think that the athletes of today are much more engaged in what they're doing in the water when they have this new dynamic where you are actually speaking to them while swimming? Because when you and I were swimming, that would be impossible. Coaches always talked about that. I wish I had a speaker underwater. But it seems to me that your athletes are embracing that. And it feels like, and I've never been to one of your workouts, that they're pretty locked in. Now we're talking about teenagers. It's not going to happen all the time. But do you find that now that you're using this, they're more locked in, this new pathway, this new dynamic that coaches have access to?
Yeah, definitely. From 8 to 18, we had, I practiced the other day. We have some girls in high school that are coming after their high school weights. That's one of their team activities. And so they're coming to my practice, just a little bit late, and that's fine. And when they get there, they grab their headsets. And one of them the other day, we were talking about fly and coming over the hill, and how you don't throw your arms until you're a millimeter past. And we talk about the 2 millimeter rule and all that stuff. And she was on deck, and she wouldn't get in because you have to hold it if you're dry. And she was, and then we stopped, and she, okay, all right, now I'm getting in. And this is, I think one of the frustrations that all coaches go through is you're not listening to me, or you're not accepting my advice, or you're not engaged, you're not with me. And this shows extremely clearly that they are. They want to know. I don't know if it's like kids these days or whatever, but I think they want to know that you're with them, that you're trying, and that you're working, and that your time on deck is just as active as their time in the water. And I think the My Swimmers help build that trust. Like, oh, you are with me. You're not off talking to a lifeguard, and you're not grabbing another cup of coffee or reading the paper or whatever. I mean, I don't know if coaches do that anymore, but they did. They did a long time ago. But you're constantly with them. And that might mean that you're playing music. Like what I was the other day, we were going to do a longer pull set, and we had just finished the intense stuff. And, I wanted to reward them for that. And I said, all right, do you guys want Tom Petty or Peter Gabriel? And they were like, who are you talking about? And I'm like, oh my God. Like, so I need, like, even that is us being engaged together. Even when I'm going to play music, or we've read pages of a book before, or we've talked about different things, but even playing music for them, or them making a playlist, even that is, yeah, my coach is having fun with me because they're letting us do that. Fun, right? We got a little bit of fun in there. So yeah, I mean, I think people are, the feedback that I've gotten from coaches who are afraid to use it, they will, in all humility, say, I don't know what I would say. And if you haven't spoken to your athletes for a 2-hour practice, you probably don't know what to say, because that's a new environment for you too. And that's okay. The thing about the My Swimmers is that if you're a really good coach, you can get a whole lot of really good coaching in. Someone did a study for her master's thesis on how many words and the amount of different words that were said over the My Swimmers versus just standing on deck. And it was not even apples and oranges. It's apples and a dinner in the Eiffel Tower. It's crazy. There's a learning curve associated with it. But if you're asking your kids to learn and be engaged and be open to socks, GMX7, monofins, and innovation that's going to help them accelerate their learning process, then I think this is part of walking the walk for you, because yeah, it's new, and you might feel vulnerable being on stage. You might not be a natural podcaster. Okay, but what do you do that's really good? Just keep doing that. Just be a bigger version of you for them. And this allows you to do that. That's all it is.
It's such a cool modality, and I'm interested in exploring it a little bit more. I've used something similar once or twice, and usually my mind goes right to, okay, let me fix everybody's technique while I've been listening. That's right.
It'll get annoying really quickly.
Yeah. We've had an awesome conversation today, Megan. I really appreciate your time. We could probably go on this topic for another episode.
Yeah.
And we will bring you back to Coach's Corner. I do want to finish off with a couple questions that I've been asking all of our guests on the way out. They're just quick fire, right off the cuff. The first one, and this is kind of exciting right now with the ISL happening, but will it take a sub 21 second performance to win the gold medal in Tokyo in the men's 50 free?
Yes.
Okay. A lot of people are answering that way too.
Yeah.
Secondly, and we won't name any names, but will 8 minutes be broken in Tokyo in the women's 800 meter free?
I think I would just be an absolute idiot to count out Katie and the people that are coming after her right now. So I'm going to say that's a distinct possibility.
Yeah, Tony Bates had a great response to that. He said, I think if she gets pushed, you're going to see something that you didn't think was possible, you know?
And I think I think people are going to try, and I think it's going to light her on fire.
Well,
How
Meg,
cool to watch that.
Oh, yeah. Thanks so much for being on today. We really appreciate it. All of our viewers can catch clips and this entire episode on the Fitter and Faster Swim Tour page. We really appreciate having you on, Meg. I look forward to talking with you more in the next couple of weeks with ASCA. And I know we're going to be driving for great things for our sport.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate you having me.
Oh, anytime. Thanks, Meg. And thanks,
All right,
everybody. Bye. We'll see you next week.